So at the end of our Basics of Starting a Business training, hopefully you'll be walking away with a strong idea of what it takes to be in business for yourself. I know some of you are already in business with sales and customers, and some of you are just exploring ideas. This will be a way to test your ideas and to figure out where you want to go with your business. Really at the heart of the 3 sessions is an understanding of the business plan, its role and its importance. And particularly for those of you that are seeking financing or funding, that written business plan is going to be your ticket to next steps. Basic marketing, as I mentioned during our next week, and basic cash planning and financial planning in our 3rd week. I'll share additional resources today that you can use in between class and to follow up with logistical questions like where to get your sales tax number, where to find out about self-employment taxes, how to think about the legal options for your business, things like that. And your business plan at the heart of it is a roadmap for success, whether you're starting up or whether you're growing your business. Okay, so I'm curious as we get started, how do you plan to finance your business, whether that's startup or growth? This will give me a sense of who's in the mix, what you're going to need out of your business plan. So go ahead and enter your responses to the poll here, please. So I see a real mix. Some folks investing in their business from other earnings from their own pocket. Some growing as the business goes, friends and family. At least a few folks looking for loans. And again, you're definitely going to need your written business plan for that. Grants, that's one of the first questions that we get often is where are the grants for women in business? And when we get to the 3rd session on financing, I will talk about specific loan and grant opportunities in more detail. The bottom line is there are not a lot of grants out there for business startup. There are a few pockets here and there for technology and innovation, for arts, sometimes for downtown businesses and infrastructure. So we'll get into that as we get into the financial piece. But this helps me get a sense of where you're coming from with your business. So a little bit of housekeeping. We will have the chat support available throughout the webinar, and I'll open up the audio at the end of the class for questions and answers from everyone. The resource documents you received, we're going to be working with those today. So have those handy, and I'll also be pulling them up to talk about as we move forward. And the homework activities you'll get in a follow-up email shortly after our class. Feel free to get in touch anytime with me or with your local Women Working Community microenterprise coordinators. And just one little plug, I know you also received links to put your data in for our VistaShare database. Having that data complete is what enables us to provide these workshops for free because it helps us get a sense of who we're serving, of the metrics of how businesses are being impacted by our trainings. So I know we have a few folks who are still working on getting that complete. If you receive a follow-up email from our administrative assistant, Sarah, please do finish that to proceed to the next class because that helps us, again, provide these trainings for free. Along those lines, too, when we close out the webinar today, you'll see an evaluation form, and your feedback is really important to us. So please do take a moment to fill that out and give us your honest feedback. This is the first time we've offered this class online, and we would love to hear your input so that we can shape the class going forward. So starting off with entrepreneurship and risk-taking. A definition of entrepreneur that I really enjoy is by Professor Susan Duffy in the School of Management at Simmons College. Entrepreneurs see the gap between what is and what should be, and we create something of value to make the world or some part of it better. So I'm curious how you come at entrepreneurship. Why are you looking at self-employment, or why are you doing self-employment? And there may be reasons that are not on my poll here, but take a moment and select any or all that are part of the mix for you here. And sometimes our motivations for self-employment are driven by passion and by our product. Sometimes they're driven by financial needs. Sometimes they're driven by our desire to have flexibility or be your own boss. And sometimes it's all of the above. And I'm seeing very balanced results here too. which is helpful. Sometimes I have folks coming into trainings that say, I just want to work from home. I don't know what I want to do, but I want to work from home. That's an important part of flexibility, but coming from a passion, a long-time dream, knowing what you do is also very important to be successful. So you may be surprised or not surprised to find out that Maine is a small business economy. I like to read the comic Dilbert. I don't know if anybody else is a Dilbert fan. But it's hard sometimes to remember that not everybody is sitting working in a cubicle. And actually the majority of businesses in Maine are microenterprises, which we define as 4 or fewer employees. So that's mom and pop stores, that's one-person businesses, that's sole proprietors, that's most of us on this webinar right now. And we are truly in the majority in terms of business entities. Small business contributes to family income, and it's often a part of a mix of things. Not every business is supporting the household 100%. And along the lines with our other polls, I'm curious where you see your business fitting in, either where you are now or where you'd like to be. How much do you need to bring in from your business? And I should point out here that both on my end and on your end, all of your poll responses are confidential. We just see the aggregate information. So feel free to be brutally honest here. So I'm seeing a lot at 50% or more and a lot at 100%. Great. And having a sense of those goals coming into this is important for your business, because how you plan in terms of sales volume, in terms of pricing, really ties back to what you need to get out of the business. So on perhaps an optimistic note, perhaps a pessimistic note, a lot of businesses fail. 75% of new businesses fail in the first year, and then only 50% will make it through the next 5 years. So I'm curious here. I'm going to pop over to Gigi because I know Gigi has sold a business before. And Gigi, do you want to chime in about how do we even define failing, closing, selling? What makes for success or failure in a business?
Thanks for the question. You know, it's interesting. I remember when first in my business, and I've been in it for a few years, and I remember saying to a neighbor of mine, I just want to be a success. And she looked at me and she said, you already are a success. And it's interesting how people will define themselves. I think women in particular are harder on themselves than most people when they're in business. Success for me was being able to manage the beast. It was about managing the business, and I had gotten into a place where the business was running me and I wasn't running the business. So once I learned how to run the business and manage the employees and the clients, then I felt like I could call myself a success. As far as selling the business, that ultimately felt like the ultimate success for me, to say that I built something, was able to pass it on, and I'm happy to say that business is now in its 15th year under new ownership.
That's wonderful. What a legacy. And Gigi's experience rings true for many of the people that I've worked with. This statistic is a little cut and dry and scary on paper. There's a lot more gray area in reality. Sometimes it's health reasons. Sometimes it's family and where you are in your life that leads you to make decisions about how big your business will be when it's time to move on from the business. And sometimes these statistics of quote-unquote failure don't really capture that gray area. So this ties back to what we just measured in terms of how much you want to get out of your business in terms of profit and the other goals you have for your business. If you meet your goals, you are a success. Your business, and as Gigi said, folks may see you as very successful in the world, not even knowing what the profit bottom line is. So it's very important for you to define what success will mean for you in your business. So I'm curious also what stage everybody is in with their business. I saw with your business ideas that a number of folks have very specific ideas. A number are already in business. So could you give me a sense here of whether you're just in the idea and planning stage, whether you've got some sales going but not really on a formal stage, And then whether you're in the startup phase, which is defined as within 1 year of opening, or you're beyond a year in operating. And you may choose multiple areas here in terms of expanding or doing business. Okay, so a lot of folks in the startup and exploration mode here. Great. So as we said, success can be many different definitions. The steps to get there involve doing what you love and doing what you know. So it's very important that you know where you're coming from and you can speak to your experience in your business and your sector. So what kind of experience do you have to date with self-employment? This could be past family businesses that are different than what you're doing now. This could be taking a hobby that you're doing and turning that into a profitable business. Perhaps you've had management experience in your sector even if it hasn't been your own business. Maybe you've done independent contracting or consulting that you're building off of. And how many years do you have in the sector that you're working in? I'll give a moment here for other folks to chime in. Okay, great. So I want to speak to a couple of things here. When we start looking at the business description and your business plan outline a little bit later in the course, any experience that you have, anything you've checked off here, these are transferable skills, even if it's not in the exact same business, even if it's not in the exact same sector. So you need to communicate that. If you've had management experience, if you've worked with other family businesses, put that on paper. Make that part of the plan. How many years, what experience with record keeping, with sales, with customer service. These are all transferable skills. A few folks who've checked no experience in this sector. That's not necessarily a deal breaker. It might be if you're, for instance, starting a restaurant and seeking financing. Sometimes that will be a real stumbling block for folks if you are looking for external funding and you've got to get somebody to believe that you know how to do what you're proposing to do. So in some cases there, if you don't have experience, go get some experience. Reach out to colleagues. Reach out to competitors. Find those transferable skills. Test that sector before you get going. And again, communicate the experience that you do have, even if it's in different areas. So the heart of our training and of your process is going to be writing that business plan, getting things down on paper. And I'm curious, why do you want to be writing a business plan? I know some people right in their registration said, I need a plan. So why do you need it? Why do you want it? Why are you on this training today? And it's perfectly fine to check all of the above if that applies to you. Okay, a real mix here. The roadmap for yourself definitely winning here. And again, those of you that need the plan for financing or funding, you're going to need it on paper before you can convince people to support you. Personally for me, the mitigating risk before jumping in is a big piece. And a couple of quotes just to speak to that. People don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. I like the business plan because it's a way to fail on paper. You can see if your numbers are not going to line up. You can make decisions and change course before dumping a bunch of money and a bunch of time in it. Or in the worst case scenario, right, defaulting on a loan or falling through in terms of other supports for you. So by nature, businesses change and businesses risk. And risk can bring you both loss and gain. So I want to take a look right from the outset of how we manage that risk as entrepreneurs and as small business owners. I think of this as the 4 Ps, okay? And this ties back to the resource document that I sent, which I'll pull up in a moment as well. Preparing and practicing. Your business plan is your opportunity to lay it all out, see how it's going to work, and prepare for that business before you do it. You can also practice things like your sales pitch. Before you pick up the phone and pitch somebody, practice it on somebody else. Refine that pitch. Before you're meeting with a lending officer or somebody who's holding the purse strings of money that you want to get for your business, practice it with somebody who's going to be constructively critical and who can help you refine that. Also very important to be patient. Now, I'll tell you a little story. My brother-in-law was looking into buying a restaurant several years ago. and he was very excited about a local restaurant that was for sale. They kept saying, oh, somebody else is looking at it, somebody else is looking at it. You got to act now. But lo and behold, they wouldn't cough up the financial information that he needed to go to the bank and evaluate whether this was a good risk or even get a loan to purchase it. So there was a lot of pressure coming at him to make that decision. Ultimately, he did not buy that, partly because of that pressure. If you prepare, if you practice, if you line up your knowledge and what you need, you'll be able to act and make a good decision when things are time sensitive. But don't be pressured into taking a step that you don't have the information to evaluate. Be patient. So the third P is pom-poms. You've got to find your cheerleaders in this process. We all have our inner critics and our external critics. Those are sometimes important. Those sometimes keep us in check. But you've got to find folks that are going to support you as you grow your business. Could be friends, could be family, could be colleagues, could be competitors, but assemble that support team. And finally, the last P is parsing that decision down into small steps. Like the example of my brother-in-law looking to buy a business. That first step might be make a business plan, look at the financials, talk to an attorney, look at the accounting, make small action steps leading up to big decisions. So I'm just going to pull up here. I'm going to share my desktop and show you the resource guide that I sent along on risk-taking. This is our first piece of homework. And I should say here that when I say homework, what you put in is what you get out of this class. We're not grading you. There's no pass, go. I won't even know if you did this. But this will help you as you pursue the logistics of the plan. So thinking about what appeals to you and what's scary about your business and the risk that lies ahead. Where can you get more information? Can you break it down to small steps? Who are those supporters? And what way of decision making do you need to reflect and understand for yourself? Some of us are eager to take the plunge. Others of us are know that we're conservative and that we're less eager to just step off into nothing. So how do you have to balance that for yourself? The 4 Ps are really what the second piece is, reducing uncertainty by preparation, reduce urgency by refusing to be rushed, reduce your anxiety by seeking support, and reduce that irreversibility by breaking down the decision. And then lastly, there's a reflective piece to think about risk-taking in your experience. So I offer this to you as a resource to follow up after the class and to do some thinking on your end. Coming back to our slides. The tools to manage risk, many of which we touched on here. In addition to this, I'd like to really highlight recognizing your successes and affirming what your business is going to be, even visualizing the goals that you're putting down. Learning from others' experiences, one of the follow-up pieces that I'll show you later in the workshop is a sample informational interview. And I encourage you to reach out to at least 3, possibly more, of your competitors and your colleagues to find out how their business worked. How did they make decisions? What can you expect from your business? And try again. Okay, we looked at the business failure statistics, and sometimes the first idea you have is not the one that sticks. So don't be afraid to try different ideas, to test things out on a small scale, and really to chart your course as you walk it. For folks that make crafts, for instance, having a booth at a craft fair might be a very great way to start that business before you open a retail storefront with a lot of overhead. So just one example there. A couple of quotes here speaking to that. Thomas Edison, a lot of failure before the successes that we know. Winston Churchill, success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. And really in my mind this is what defines an entrepreneur, is that ability to move forward. So the business plan, this is the heart of what we're talking about in this class. This is the heart of what's going to give you that roadmap for yourself and be your ticket to financing and funding for your business. your success is going to be made up from a couple of different quarters. You have the economic environment, which certainly we've been through a recession, and Maine has been at a different point in different sectors because of that. That's one external factor. Availability of your supplies and materials is another external factor. Your skills and your entrepreneurship is the other balance. Your industry expertise, those transferable skills that we talked about before, your marketing plan, and how you manage your finances, these all come together, and you can see the middle of the Venn diagram here. That's where your entrepreneurial success comes in, and how you put those together with your business. Your product, your service, your financials, and your marketing are the three legs of that stool that your business plan will rest upon. So why do we do a business plan? It makes us stop and think about what we're doing. It gets your ideas out of your head and onto the page, and even if today just motivates you to whip out a piece of paper and start putting something down, that's your first step. It's a roadmap to help you reach the objectives of your mission. It's a to-do list, action steps and benchmarks. And then it grounds you. Your business plan is going to be your own basis for evaluation. So when you set goals, you'll know whether you've met them financially and otherwise. So very important here. Business planning is not brain surgery. My heart breaks every time somebody gets in contact with me and says, I just bought a business plan online for my sector, or I'm going to go hire somebody to write a 50-page plan for me. We are not talking about writing a book here. A short plan for a customer service-based business might be 6 or 8 pages. A retail business with a lot more detail about products and pricing might be 10 to 12, maybe 15 pages. Probably no one is going to read your plan if it's much longer than that. So do not feel like you need an advanced degree in business to write a business plan. There are even business plans that are 1 page and very simple. So hopefully the tools that we have today will give you a sense of what you need to move forward. So as we get into those tools, I'm curious, how confident do you feel about this process that lies ahead? We have some fans of the children's book with the train. I think I can, I think I can. And we have at least one person still quaking in their boots. So that has now established my personal goal for this training, is to get you at least from I'm quaking in my boots to I think I can, I think I can. So let's go right into the business plan itself. You can think of the plan as a house, as a storefront. Even if you're working out of your home and you don't have a storefront, metaphorically, your plan is made up of the operations, of how you manage the business, of the money and the financial piece, how you brand the business, your business cards, your logo, your packaging, literally speaking in terms of how you put your product out to your customers, but also metaphorically speaking, how do you put all your marketing pieces together, your selling and pricing, your competition and where you stand relative to your competition, your distribution, and I'd add to that your production of your product and service, which is really in the basis. And then how do you get people to your business is the promotion and advertising, and who are you speaking to with your target market. So let's take a look at the business plan outline. Pardon my navigation here. This was another resource that I sent in the attachments to the email, and I'll pull it up right in front of here. We're going to spend several minutes going over the pieces here so you really understand what you're starting to put on paper. Okay? So you're going to have some kind of cover sheet with your information. This could be something beautiful with a photo of your business. I see we have one of the businesses on the line with merino sheep and cashmere goats. Definitely park a cute picture of those sheep, goats, and products on your cover sheet if you're going for financing. People like visual information. The heart of your business is going to be your mission statement. And again, this is not 2 pages long. This is a couple of sentences. What's your business name? What does it do for people? And use action verbs here. You don't just sell, you you make people warm, right, with felted hats and scarves with the sheep and goats. Use action verbs, use vibrant language in your business. And keep this to perhaps 2, 3, maybe 4 things. If you're selling 20 different things, don't list all of them in your mission statement. Think of those broad categories of what you're doing with your products and services. What are you doing and for whom with your business? Now, if the plan's to be used for financing, a brief statement about the sources and uses for funds. We're going to come back to this as we talk about financials in the 3rd week. Your point here from a plan is that if you're approaching a funder for a loan, for a grant, for any sort of funding, you want to give them a thumbnail sketch right up at the top, usually after the mission statement, to give them a sense of the scale of what you're asking and the big picture of where those funds are going to go. Your financial detail is going to explain that in much more detail, and we'll come back to this in week 3. Now, business description, your next section. This looks very long, but this is only a couple of sentences really. Type of business. Are you a product? Are you a service? Are you merchandising? What is the status of your business? As you saw in the poll earlier, startup is defined as within 1 year of starting the business. If you're expanding, you're looking for funding to go into a storefront, to build on, things like that, make that clear. What date did you start doing your business? I've worked with a lot of folks sometimes who have run a similar business in another place. It's important to reference that here. Was the business running and doing very well, and now you're starting it again where you're based now? And what date are you going to start under the current business plan, or are you already operating? Now, this form of business ownership. Another resource that I sent to you was the legal structures for business. So I'll leave this as a document for you to look at on your own, but I'll point out that if you are one person running your business and you've just hung out the shingle on the outside of your home and here you are having sales, by default you are a sole proprietor. And it basically means that the IRS, the law, look at you and your business as one and the same. If you're running the business with somebody else, you might have a partnership, either a general partnership or a limited partnership. You can have a limited liability partnership as well. You can incorporate as a limited liability company, an LLC. That's a very common entity for small businesses that are seeking to protect themselves. You might set up an LLC to protect your personal assets from the business risk and the business liability. At larger levels, there are also C Corps and S Corps and that limited liability that we were talking about. Really at this level, if you are wondering which one applies to you, I would steer you to talk to an attorney. I am not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. I can give you just enough to be dangerous here. But if you're looking at the tax implications, if you're looking at your particular business and what makes sense, it does make sense to consult an attorney. Profit potential. In your business description, this is something that if you start writing your plan today after this class, you're probably going to put a big to be determined there. And you're going to come back to fill that in after we do the financials in week 3 where you map out what you're planning to get from profits. If you've been running the business already or you've run the business in a separate place or before in your history, you might reference here the scale of the business. What did you take in terms of gross sales? What did you take in terms of net profits? Definitely mention if your business is going to employ people, if it's going to have an economic impact in your local area, particularly if you're applying for financing or funding, you want to reference that right up front because that is often a defining factor or a contributing factor in swaying people to support that business, assuming that you also are profitable and have everything else in place. Your location and hours of operation is also part of the logistics you might mention here. So, business.
Hey, Erica?
Yes.
Hey, it's Gigi.
Yes.
Are you showing the business plan outline right now?
I am. Are folks not seeing that?
I'm not seeing it. I'm just wanting to make sure they are seeing it.
Okay, hang on. I thought I shared here. I'm going to go back to sharing.
Beautiful.
And are folks seeing that now?
I see it now.
Okay, my apologies everybody who was looking at your hard copy paper and not seeing my wonderful highlighting as we went along. And do let Gigi know via chat there if you're having any other issues. So back to sharing. So just following through on the outline here, your market, this is what we're going to dive in depth next week. What are your product and services? What's the language you use to talk about those? Who are your customers that you're marketing to? How big is that market that you might be able to reach? Where do you fit in with your competitors? How are you going to produce and distribute that product? How are you going to promote it and brand it? How are you going to advertise it? What's your pricing? And again, we'll talk about this more next week. But with pricing, for some of you this might be as simple as I do house cleaning and I charge X amount per hour. For retail folks, you might not list every single thing you sell in your store, but the categories of what you sell, the price that you charge your customers, the costs that go into that, and the net profit for each category of thing. We'll look at that in detail next week. As well, your break-even analysis, which again we'll talk about a little bit today and a little bit in our marketing and financial sections. Operations and management, this is where you get to brag about your experience and make your case for why that business is going to succeed. All of those skills and background that you checked off in the poll earlier today on the call, those transferable skills, that past experience in your sector, that's what you want to get down here. You want to be clear, if you're not the only one who's running the business, who else is going to be a part of that? Employees, positions, professional services, lawyer, banker, accountant, insurance, etc. This is who and what is going to make that business work. Now the financial plan, this is our week 3 in total, where we're going to focus on how you build that cash flow projection and the other financials for your business. Supporting documents that you would attach might include a resume, might include a personal financial statement, and one of our homework pieces today will help you in terms of putting together your budget and understanding some of your personal finances. Job descriptions if you're going to have employees, and letters of reference. An example of that might be, or letters of reference or letters of intent. That might be if you're a downtown business, you might have a letter of reference from the Downtown Economic Development Coordinator speaking to how your business is going to be part of downtown revitalization efforts. It's not the make or break piece in your application to a lender, but it speaks to your business being connected to resources and to the communities. Copies of leases and contracts. For instance, if you are looking to buy a building for your business, you're going to need the purchase and sale agreement included at some point in that process. So coming back to our slideshow here, and again we'll come to question and answer at the end here. Any questions via chat right now in terms of the business plan outline and the big picture of what we're looking at? And again, we have Gigi online to help with that too. So your homework from the business plan piece here and throughout the class is start putting things on paper today. Even if you have a lot of areas that you don't know, fill in what you do know. Make an action plan to start getting quotes and pieces for what you don't know, and just start putting it together. So I want to do a little bit exercise when we talk about feasibility, viability, and desirability. This is the heart of evaluating the business idea. And I remember that a lot of you indicated in the poll earlier that you're still bouncing around various ideas. That's fine. That's a great place to be at this stage, because the business plan is going to help you test out those ideas. You might start working on the plan and see, oh, this idea is just not going to pay for itself. Therefore, why don't I look at this other direction? Oh, that'll work out a little bit better. Why don't I explore that more seriously? So feasibility, we talk about, is it possible to do the business? And I think about this especially with market size. Are there actually people out in the world who want to buy your product? If not, then you're probably not looking at a feasible business. There are a couple other factors for feasibility. If you come to me and you say, I want to start a Cineplex, a huge movie theater, and I need $2 million to start it. Well, if you have no income today and you have no assets to put down towards the business and you have no partners or other financing that would match any kind of loan, it's probably not feasible for you to do that at this point. It might be in the future. You might still put together that plan, do that research, and then make a plan for how to build up those assets and get yourself to a place that you could actually put that into action. But that feasibility of financing is sometimes a stumbling block. Production and distribution, it might be a stumbling block too. Maybe you have a wonderfully innovative idea, but the materials to make that idea do not exist, or they don't exist in a pricing or quantity or geographic location that will enable you to do your business. So these are some questions around feasibility. Viability. Can that business actually survive? Can it sustain itself? That's going to depend on your pricing, on your volume of sales, and what it takes to break even with your expenses. And then the bottom line, is it desirable? Is it actually worth your time and effort to do? And factors with that are certainly the profit for the business. Is it going to bring in what you need? Is it going to be time effective? And are you going to be satisfied doing what you're doing? That's where you've got to balance that passion that drives your self-employment with the profit that comes out of your business. So I'm going to give you a little scenario from my own experience here. And Gigi already told me that my drawing was really horrible, so I apologize. But you're going to see a little drawing here. I have worked in the therapeutic horseback riding field prior to coming to Women Work in Community, and I've got 3 horses in my backyard and a barn right now that I'm not really doing anything with. They're my personal horses. But what if I were to start a business? So I live in Caribou, and I hopped on the census.gov site and I looked up, if I were going to give some horse lessons, how many children are there in Caribou? So here's the bad drawing, right? There are almost 1,300 children ages 6 to 18 in Caribou. Okay? So if I looked moderately conservatively at 5% of the market, that would be 65 students. In my experience, most students ride weekly. You've got some turnover with any kind of service or student-based business. Other logistics beyond market size would be financing feasibility. If I were looking at buying my farm today, I'd need 20% down. So do I have that? Can I do that? Can I actually get the property? And then for production and distribution in this sense, we'd be talking about, can I find suitable horses? Can I find hay, right? If I were down in the Southwest, there's not a lot of hay going around these days. It's a sort of challenging commodity to get if you haven't already stocked up for the season. Am I able to get insurance? Have I worked in the sector before and I can convince somebody to actually cover me? So I'll give you the little background here because I'm going to ask you a poll in just a moment of whether you think this is feasible for me. So here I am in Caribou. I'll give you the tip that I do already own the farm. I do already have the horses. I have the hay. And I have the insurance coverage that I could add on for lessons. So looking at the market size and that feasibility question in my case, what do you think? My farm is called Equus Farm, not exactly brain surgery on my naming. But in this case, is it feasible? I will not be offended if you don't think that it's feasible, viable, or desirable. Oh, everybody! Oh, somebody said maybe. Good. Okay. We have many yeses. We have one that's thinking, nope, not feasible. Might be that market size is too small, right? I'm way up in rural Aroostook County. There's a farm in Fort Fairfield near me. There's another one down in Holton. Maybe that market's not enough to sustain me. So a little bit of a divided response here. Some folks think yes. Some folks think no. Some folks think maybe. So viability. When I'm thinking about viability, it's that heart of, can the business sustain itself? Okay? So in my area, going rate for a lesson is probably $35 an hour. So your pricing is going to be based on a number of factors, including your competitors' rates, including your costs going into it. We'll get into that much more next week. But for me, let's say $35 an hour is what I'd be looking at. If I don't have any staff, I'm not paying anybody per lesson or per hour. There's no direct cost in my lessons. All of my costs are overhead. And this is the depressing part as I crunched a few numbers here. But even before marketing, even before a business phone number or ongoing repairs, I'm looking at about $13,500 a year just to feed the horses, just to keep them with vet and farrier, tack and supplies if things break, or for a lesson program, the property taxes and the commercial insurance. So I figure break even on this. This is where we're making you do a little bit of math here. I know it's before noon, but I take that $13,500, and if I divide that, I took 48 weeks because I figured I need to actually be able to take a break or leave the farm for 4 weeks of each year. If I take that $13,500 and I divide it by 48 weeks and I divide it by 35 lessons, I get 8 lessons per week just to cover my costs for this business. Again, that's before marketing, phone, etc. But maybe I'm figuring, hey, I'm already doing repairs on my own property. I have a cell phone, and I'm going to do all social media and free marketing. We'll get back to marketing next week. But 8 lessons per week. What do you think about that? Is Equus Farm viable? Is this sustainable for me? Again, I will not be offended by your responses. Oh, I love this group already. There's a lot of maybes because there's still a lot of factors that I haven't given you yet, that we haven't decided. So let's look at those final factors. The desirability piece, right? We've just looked at break even. Can the thing pay for itself? But I'd like to more than break even. If I'm going to do even 8 lessons a week, if I'm going to pay all that for commercial insurance and running my business, I'd like to make some money out of it. So I think of desirability as profit and your time and your satisfaction. So just for kicks, I thought, what if I were able to do 6 lessons a day? That's 2 per horse really. 5 days a week. Well, that would bring me a little over $50,000 a year in total customer sales. Netting after the expenses that we looked at, that's $36,900. Now I share with you here that I am a household of 2, just so you have a reference that, I don't know, if work dried up for me and my family and we had to live off of our horses, could we feed ourselves on $36,900? Concerns I might have. Well, if I'm doing 6 lessons a day, 5 days a week, what if I have a lame horse? What if I have a horse that gets grumpy with a lot of people bouncing on it and trotting around day after day after day with beginner riders? So I got to think about, is that desirable for my horses? Is that sustainable for me? I live in Caribou. It's really ridiculously cold here today. It's probably ridiculously cold where some of you are too. But temperature, I can't really ride people every single week throughout the year. It's just too cold some weeks. Your light, your hours available after school, things like that, that's a factor. Did I factor in any help to my break even here? Let's look. I don't think I did. I have no help here. So if I'm doing 6 hours a day of actual working with people in lessons, I'm doing a lot of shoveling stalls out of that. I'm doing all my marketing and billing outside of that. This is probably more than a 40-hour week. This could be a 50 or 60-hour week easily. And what about personal perks here? I didn't factor in any health insurance. I didn't factor any savings for retirement. So unless I am seeing that those can come out of this, could be a little challenging for me. So given these factors, what do you think? What should I do with my 3 horses? Oh, is this going to be unanimous? Good thing you're enjoying this training, because clearly I am not quitting my day job for Equus Farm. And others proceed with caution here. So truly, this could be a different scenario. We are in a challenging economy, and I pose these scenarios without any right answer for you. If I had no job and I had no income and I needed to put money or food on the table and feed my family now, I probably would try this. I give you a little background. When we bought the farm, I did do a cash flow. I did a little mini business plan, and I figured that we could probably make about minimum wage times 35 hours a week and really never be able to leave the farm. And to me, that's not worth doing right now. It certainly could be worth doing if I were in a different situation or if I needed to augment my income. So we didn't see any yeses there in the last poll. Nobody said, go quit your job, go run this full time now. So what could I do in this scenario if I want to improve my lot in life, improve my bottom line, make it more feasible? And you can select any or all of these. What do you think would be my next steps? So I'm seeing a couple folks right off the bat saying offer other products and services. Boarding barns, right? I just looked at lessons. Maybe boarding is an option. Comes to mind, we have a fabulous graduate who does sled dog rides and training. They added on products to their business with a custom dog sled brakes and what they call a critter carrier. And those products are really balancing out their business. Increased pricing. I see a lot of folks looking at that option, and yeah, maybe I did my pricing compared to my competitors, and I thought, well, some people are at 25 and some people are at 50, so I'll be at 35. I might easily be able to bump that to 40, not lose a lot of customers, and make a big difference on the bottom line. Decreasing expenses, truly I do a bit of that on mine. I trim one of my own horse's hooves and my 3 guys are barefoot. That farrier bill would be a lot bigger. But you can't always control that. Your expanded market could also be a piece. I looked just at kids and caribou, but maybe I need to factor in people coming from surrounding communities. Maybe I need to look at adults and different demographics for my lessons. Now the hire help and get more horses, right? That might be able to. Sometimes if you ramp up production, you can get a better economy of scale. You can serve a better market, and that business will come into alignment in terms of the bottom line. Other folks take the different tack to just stay at that small scale and break even. I'm going to say one piece about that break-even point, just from a tax perspective. If you are turning a hobby into a business, if you run a profit in any 3 out of 5 years, if you get in an audit situation, the onus is on the IRS to prove that, oh, you're just doing it as a hobby. If you run a loss year after year after year, right, if you don't turn that profit in 3 out of 5 years, the onus is on you to prove that you're trying to run it as a business. It's not the end of the world. Your business plan, your marketing, your attempts to turn a profit, those all may show, yep, you're trying to do it, you're going in the right direction. But truly for me with my horses right now, I have 3 horses in the backyard. I own the property. If I said, well, I'll just pick up a couple lessons each week, but then I'll take those tax deductions, I'm probably putting myself in a little bit of a precarious situation if I'm not really running it as a business, but I'm trying to take all the deductions as though they were. So just a little aside there from that end. Sometimes the break even and just that small scale can pose its own challenges. So our next steps for the business is really to put those pieces on paper for your business plan and to evaluate that feasibility, desirability, and viability for your own business. What we just did is an example of a really quick break-even. We're going to come back to that in our financial section in much, much more detail, so you're able to look at your numbers and get everything together and make that same analysis for your business. So a few resources in between our weekly trainings here. Women Work in Community, and I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop so you can see each of these. One moment. Okay. So Women Work in Community's website, as I mentioned, is a place to see upcoming trainings beyond this. If you go through this class and you feel like you need some more hands-on help as you're putting that business plan together, our New Ventures training is a great next step. And as I mentioned, we've got one coming right up in the Bath and Brunswick area and in several of our other regions as well. So you can see that on our website. You can also get in touch with your regional staff. I'm way up in Aroostook County. I'm happy to meet with anybody that wants to drive to Caribou or call me on the phone. But you also have wonderful people right in your neck of the woods. I'll have that resource sheet sent to you directly so you have contact information for your local Women Work and Community Centers, and you can find it right on our website. A second resource is the Maine Business Work site. And this On Your Own in Business microenterprise page has a lot of wonderful trainings, which you're welcome to check out this week. We'll be looking at some of these in more depth, particularly in the financial week. There's a great cash flow workshop that Gigi helped put together that can give you a real taste of how to do your cash flow. There are several wonderful marketing workshops. A couple that I would steer you to especially are the personal selling and e-marketing and social media. Each of those feature sort of experts in the field from the state of Maine. So great online workshops, self-guided. You can take them at any time. Most of them are 20 to 30 minutes. So good resources at the Maine Business Works site. Maine Small Business Development Centers is another wonderful resource. SBDC centers are also located around the state and have business counselors, often have financing in-house, and serve as economic development hubs. So definitely check out your center and office, and that's a great way to get feedback on your business plan, searching for market research, putting the pieces together. Another great resource on the State of Maine website at maine.gov portal business, you have Maine Business Answers here. And that is basically the help desk for the state of Maine. If you don't know whether you need a license or a permit in your sector, they can help you find out. They've got a lot of great resources too around taxes, corporations, legal pieces, employers. Certainly if you're planning to hire employees, get in touch with these resources because they have a great packet about how to deal with unemployment insurance, workers' comp, things like that. And then finally, I know we don't think of the IRS as the user-friendly site, but they have a fantastic online library of resources at the IRS Small Business, it's Self-Employed Individuals Tax Center. And it will walk you through everything you need to know about self-employment taxes, which could be a training in and of itself here. I will speak to a couple of points because these questions often come up for folks who are in the introductory trainings like this. So we're speaking about federal taxes right now. If your business is going to net you $400 or more in net profits, then you've got to deal with self-employment tax and reporting that income and everything. If you are going to owe the IRS more than $1,000 at the end of the year, then you need to pay them quarterly estimated taxes. That's when you hear about self-employed folks paying their quarterlies. There are a few ways around this. If you've got somebody else in your household or yourself who has another job and you've got payroll tax withheld in another way, often you can bump up your withholdings there so that you bring your bottom line tax liability below that $1,000, and then you don't have to pay quarterlies. You can just do it once a year. But the key piece is that you want to be aware of what your obligations are going to be for the business. And there are many online calculators. If you just Google tax calculator self-employed, you'll get H&R Block is one, Bankrate has one. You can plug in your own tax situation in terms of all the personal information from your previous year's taxes and plug in what you think you're going to be making from the business, and it will calculate for you what that bottom line is going to look like. If you don't do that, or if you're just really totally unsure what that business is going to bring and it's on a pretty small scale, a good rule of thumb is to set aside somewhere in the 15 to 25 range in terms of net profits and the percentage of what you make. So again, we could spend an entire day talking about taxes, but that's enough to at least get you started and point you in the right direction to the irs.gov site, which can answer a lot of your detailed questions there. So next steps. We talked about the business plan, and I want to show you briefly one of the other resources that I attached prior to our meeting today. I'm going to share my desktop to take you to that resource now. The, give me a moment, the startup checklist. So this is speaking to some other logistics in getting your business going. We talked about the written business plan. You'll have all the bones of that coming out of this class. We talked a little bit about the legal forms, and that's that additional resource that I showed you. You can actually get the forms to incorporate right online at that maine.gov site, and here's a direct link to those forms if you do choose to incorporate. Your business name is quite important. Even if you don't need to register the name or you don't really care about protecting the name of the business, you want to make sure that nobody else has it, especially in a web-based world. Equus Farm, good example, right? I have a little Facebook page. That wasn't taken. I honestly haven't looked at the domain because I'm not really running it as a business, but I bet there's an equusfarm.com probably already out there in the world somewhere. I'd need to find another name if I were trying to build my business, make it distinct, have a marketing presence, and really own that web turf. If you're going to have employees, you need an employer identification number, also called an EIN. And real caveat here, do not pay for this. Heartbreakingly, I've heard from a lot of folks that have paid $100 or $200 to have somebody get the EIN for them. You can get it for free online with the form at that irs.gov site. Okay? State sales tax. If you're selling a product to customers in Maine, you need to collect sales tax. I got my comeuppance the other day to learning that some services were also included that I didn't know. I had a seamstress I was working with who, when she called the Maine Business Answers to check in about licenses and taxing and so forth, they pointed out that she was counted as basically a manufacturer in terms of working on products that people were bringing her. So check and make sure. Do you need to collect sales tax for what you are selling? Is your service taxable or is your service exempt? The resale certificate also helps you buy your materials without paying the tax on that end because you'll be collecting the sales tax on the final product from your customers. So make sure you understand that in and out. On your town level, you might need a permit. You might need to be zoned properly if you're working out of your home and receiving customers. Some towns don't have permits. Some towns don't require that. But you want to find that out. Certainly if you're looking at buying a retail space, make sure your zoning is in place before you jump in. We talked about the Business Answers resource for the licensing. Insurance, another big need, definitely required in some sectors and advisable in others. If you have employees, you're going to need the workers' compensation and unemployment insurance as well. So start getting quotes around that right now. By the time we get to the third week, you'll want your numbers to be able to be plugged in. Separate bank account for your business is a great idea. Why? It keeps the two things in different places. You can track your income. You can track your expenses. I mentioned in passing that the fear of an audit, right? Are you conducting your business as a business? Well, it's a lot easier to show that your financials are separate and you're really conducting things on the up and up if you have a separate bank account. So this is for your record keeping as well as business operations. A DBA account simply means doing business as, and they can put that right on your account, meaning that people write checks to your name or they write checks to the business name, you're able to deposit them into your bank account for the business. An accountant, very important if you are not comfortable doing your own tax preparation, if you're trying to figure out do I want to incorporate in different ways, does this make sense in terms of the tax liability for me? Talk to an accountant. On the flip side, if you're doing your own taxes now and you're a sole proprietor, it can be very simple sometimes to do your own taxes. So it's really your own skills and your own experience that will guide you in direction in terms of doing your own or working with an accountant. The Business Answers packet, again referring back to the Maine Business Answers site that I showed you there, and here's their 800 number if you'd want to just give a call to get those resources. So coming back to our PowerPoint here. The real key that I'd like you to take away from this first week is really steps and goals to get going. Making that plan, following the plan, evaluating each step, and working towards those financial goals that we put out. So on that note, let me walk you through some of the homework activities that I'm going to provide for you to follow off in this direction. The resources that you got before class that we've taken a look at today include the risk-taking, feasibility, viability, and desirability. That's another handout that you got on the confirmation for this class. That legal structures for business, going into a little more detail. The business startup summary we just looked at, and the heart of it, that business plan outline that we went over. Now you're also going to get in the follow-up email a sample business plan of an entirely fictitious business that those of us at Women Working Community dreamed up for ABC Daycare. I don't promise that it packs the most marketing punch that you've ever seen in your life, but it's a good sample of how to put these pieces together for a basic service business. I'll also provide a link to the SBDC site where they have a great example of a retail business, a bicycle store, and that will give you a better sense of a business plan for something with products or retail nature. Other resources that you will get in the follow-up email, developing a personal budget and goals for your business. Now, hey, little tip here. That poll that we did where you figured what percentage do you want to earn from your business in terms of supporting your household, you really already did this homework by answering that poll. So that's going to be a way for you to look at your budget, what you need for your household, and what that business needs to provide to set some goals. The other tool that I'm going to send you is some questions in terms of how to do those informational interviews with your competitors and colleagues. And I would ask you for your homework for this week to have at least 3 conversations with folks. Could be direct competitors, could be people working in your sector in another location. Whatever level you're comfortable with, starting to reach out and ask people what their experience has been. And I'm going to share those documents here just so you have a sense of what is coming your way. So the sample informational interview, for instance, how did they start up? What's their customer volume? Are there seasonal ups and downs? What kind of advertising and promotion are working well for them? Who else is in the sector, and who do they see as top competitors in your field? And you'd be surprised. Some folks look at these suggested questions and they say, how could I possibly ask people how much they're making from their business? But I'll tell you in my experience, I worked with somebody here in Caribou who was very shy about approaching her competitors. And I will typically say to people, if you reach out to 10 people, expect to hear back or have a good conversation with 5, right? You've got to be able to hear no as you're trying to gather this research. But 50-50, if you're polite, if you're respectful, you'll get some good information. So she came back to me after a couple of weeks and she said, Erica, I reached out to 10 people and one of them didn't want to tell me how much her business earned in net profits. So truly she had detailed conversations with 9 direct competitors in our little town or in our surrounding towns who shared this detailed information because she was coming at it in a really respectful way. And that enabled her to set realistic goals for her business, to think about what marketing would work and what wouldn't. And she's still in business now and doing very successfully. So the other resources that I referenced here, the personal budget, looking at your household needs, where the money is coming from and where it's going. And then on the bottom line, what does your business need to generate? What are other sources of income that might help you get to the point that you want to be with your business? And then again, the part that you really already did in our poll. What do you need from your business in terms of percentage of income for your household? And what is that going to translate into in terms of sales and profit? I know you can't answer this exactly today because the pricing we'll do next week and the financials that we'll do in the 3rd week are going to fill this in for you. But take a stab at it. See where you're starting off because particularly the goal for your personal income coming out of it, you need to know that to put all the pieces together in the following weeks. The sample business plan that I mentioned, ABC Daycare, this is not a logo. This is clip art that I grabbed from the web. Do not do that for your business because clip art is not a logo. But this gives you a sense of what a template might look like for the business plan and the financials. Lastly, coming your way through the follow-up email will be that list of Women Work in Community statewide contacts. Gigi, who's on the call, Jane Searles, who's on the call, myself, and our colleagues around the state. So each of those will be headed your way shortly, but I wanted you to be able to see those right now and know what you're looking at. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and unmute all of us. If we get horrible feedback or something, I may mute you and then unmute individuals, but I'm going to unmute all to start. And I would welcome your questions, your discussion.
The conference has been unmuted.
Okay, hello everybody on the voice side. Maggie is asking, I see on chat that can we have a copy of the outline I shared. All of those resource documents we just looked at, some of them you got before the class, and I'll be sending the sample plan, the personal budget, the informational interviews, and all that as a follow-up email. So you'll have those right in your inbox shortly after the workshop.
Thanks.
Questions, comments?
My name's Lisa, and I have a friend who is, I'm more of a person that I want to plan it out. She wants to jump into something, and then I have another friend, and the first friend I mentioned wants the same reason that I do. I want to eventually get out of the work that I'm doing, but it's going to take several years. And then I have another friend who doesn't really need a business. She'd like to go very, very slowly, too slow. So I have one on one side that wants to go too fast and one that wants to go too slow. So I want to plan, and then I'll feel much better if I plan. And that's what I've gotten from this is you guys, you're saying plan it out before and take those steps the way that you should. Don't jump into anything.
And really, I see the plan as a way to test things out on paper before making a significant investment in it. Sometimes it sounds, Lisa, like you have a great balance of people around you, right? You've got some folks that are chomping at the bit and others that are cautious. But a question I'd have back to you, you're mentioning friends and people here. Are these potential partners in the business?
Yes.
Okay. So you raise a great point there. I'm hearing a little echo here, so if I'm still hearing an echo, I'll mute folks in the background. But you raise a great point in terms of partnership, Lisa. We saw some partnership options on the legal structures for business, and partnerships definitely are their own ball of wax, both because of the dynamics of different people and group decision making that you're mentioning. Also in terms of the profits for the business, what are your expectations coming into it and coming out of it? People may have very different needs and expectations for what's coming from the business. So the clearer that you can be both in the planning but also even the level of the personal budget and the goals for my business, right? You might be looking at that personally, but share those resources from this meeting with your potential business partners to make sure that you're on the same page as you craft your partnership and those expectations too. So I think that's a great point that you raise. Other questions?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well,
Yeah?
I just have a comment that, so sitting here, I think I've mainly decided, which is kind of interesting, I've decided that the one that wants to move really fast, I think I'm just going to let her go on her own.
Let her be the maverick. Okay. Good.
Oh, and I'm going to, because she wants to have a business in place by summer, and I don't think that that's feasible, So I think I'm just going to tell her she needs to probably just go on her own, and I think I'm going to take the more slow approach and see what I can come up with.
Good. And I'm seeing some questions on the chat here, folks asking about the recording to this week's webinar. We will be downloading the recording, and we can send out a link to that. As I mentioned, if there is anybody with a conflict with the next 2 classes, get in touch directly with me, and we'll make sure that you get that recording directly too. So I think I will, unless we have any other questions hopping in, I will go ahead and close our conference for today. I am so excited to be working with all of you. And again, you'll get those resources in the follow-up email shortly. You'll also get a separate email from ReadyTalk early next week with the link to log in for our next session. Just like you got for this week, you'll get resources ahead of time and a direct link for next Wednesday. So thanks to all of you for making time to participate today. Have fun as you follow up with the resources and the homework. Again, what you put in is what you get out of it. And I and my colleagues are happy to help you as you're moving forward, both during the class and after. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
The conference has been muted.